Right, welcome to another IDEA webinar. We have an all-star panel for you today. We're on a particularly poignant subject. We're going to be talking about productivity and collaboration and wellness. And so I think the format for this particular webinar is a little bit more relaxed than we've had before. It's going to be more kind of ad lib. We're going to go through a few thoughts, individual top tips for how you can improve productivity and collaboration and wellness in this unusual environment. And then I'm going to present a number of ideas and then invite our esteemed panelists to jump in with any comments. And then at the end, I invite you to please put in your comments, your thoughts on additional things that we've missed that you absolutely love, things that have really helped you get the most out of this time and improve wellness and collaboration and productivity. So without further ado, I'm going to jump in and why don't I ask Eric to start with what your top tip is for improving productivity and or collaboration and wellness.
Right. Well, thank you, Mark. It's great to be here. So we've been, obviously, like most of you, on a work from home schedule for since March. And we have had now employees go back to the office on an optional basis. And so we have about 30% of the employees in our Berlin office coming back. And we sort of have asked a lot of people what's working, what's not working. I have to say the productivity in general has been good. The areas that we're missing, in particular, as we're hiring new people and we conduct sort of problem solving sessions, is all the things that are hard to schedule. All the interactions that just happen because you're walking around and you just go to the coffee machine and you meet somebody. And that's harder, not just for people that have worked in the company for a while, finding out about other people, but it's really hardest for newbies, people that have just come in. And so one of the things we instituted that's working very well is these random Zoom calls that are sort of basically you spend 10 minutes with 10 people in the company as a new person coming in, or more people. We schedule them every once in a while to just talk to them for 10 minutes and get to know them and see what they do. And so the same way, even though they're scheduled, you don't know who you're gonna meet. And it helps people sort of be part of understand the culture, understand other departments, and have references, which you always get as you come in as an employee. So I would say that's one of the ways to sort of make up for this lack of sort of spontaneous interactions that you have once you're in the office. So that would be one of the top tips that I have. Yes.
Fantastic. Engineering serendipity. Love it.
Right.
Geoff, could you have a shot at whatever your top tip is?
Yeah, so we also have been shut down since March. Our primary office in New Hope and in Philadelphia, also San Francisco, all work from home and remains that way. And I would say, we're kind of prepping for the return. We spent substantial money on the space, put UV lights in all the air conditioning ducts. Obviously do the same as many people in terms of Zoom and Slack. But I would say my tip is to try to start something new in terms of some new habit or some new practice, whether it's working out. It's kind of a more personal tip. But I find where people struggle is, the more that they're just kind of confined inside the same space all the time and doing the same thing. They're kind of getting in a rut, and so we've seen some people complain about that rut more than others. I think a lot of people are handling it quite well, and so I personally have kind of started a new writing practice, writing on Medium, on the blog, and that I find just doing something different. Maybe work out more, can help maintain some level of sanity. So I'd say my top tip would be to start some new practice that you didn't do, or to take some existing practice that you wish you did and do more of it.
Thank you, Geoff. Muru.
Thank you, Mark. It's unlike my friends here. We have a very large workforce. We have almost 3,500 employees, and working from home something is not common in India, and particularly for us. So for us, in order to ensure that we are able to address the issues, we operated at three levels. One is at a psychological level. We communicated that there no salary deduction for employees. And we also started sending daily motivational and work from home stories. This ensure that people are staying at a psychological level, they are good. And on the operation level, we created app-based calling and app-based service to ensure that people are able to do the job working from home. On the performance level, we started driving the performance for all our associates, our employees, to ensure that they are able to make what they're supposed to do on a daily basis. So including that the number of hours they're supposed to call, the number of hours they're supposed to do the service to the customer. A couple of things helped to drive the performance. Uh, I started doing 5 calls with the top 5 performing employees across India. That's something really worked. So every day I called, the people nominate employees. So I called the 5 employees, and that sort of really worked very well. And we also daily morning call at 9:31 with our senior leadership team. So that's something happening regularly. So that ensure that all the leadership team staying connected and they know what's going on in the business. And obviously started leveraging the collaborative tools like Slack or other cloud-based tools. So we, as I said, we address all the three levels: operation level, psychological level, and the performance level. And obviously we are doing much better than what we initially thought. In fact, the quarter which went by, we did one of the best quarters compared to the last couple of years. So in fact, COVID has been really a blessing in disguise for us.
Thank you, Muru. Excellent. Jens, I think your case is quite unique because you don't do offices. So what's your top tip?
Yes, Mark, thank you. So I work from home for almost 10 years now. Our team is fully distributed. So we're quite used to this and not having an office and working from home. So my top tip is using a tool like 15.5. It's for employee performance management. It's quite good because that gives you a great overview. How is the team doing, how they feel. And what they do is basically they write a report every week. That's why it's called 15.5. Not longer than 15 minutes to write that report and not longer than 5 minutes to read it. So it's fully customizable. You can add as many questions as you want. And in our case, our 15.5 report looks like this. So you have a rating, how you feel from 1 to 5. And then you have some questions. In our case, it's what happened this week that you want to celebrate? What was annoying you this week? And then we have a question, one question from a question pool where we can ask whatever is a current topic or a poll or something like this. So the question of this week is, how are we providing enough growth opportunities for your role? If not, what's missing? And everyone can comment on this. You can also write a private comment so that only the manager sees this. And the nice thing about this is that others can also read this report. So in case someone feels like just a 1 or 2, then others can just jump in and like, hey, what's up? What's going on? And it offers a few more tools, like you can do the one-on-ones with it. And also it has a feature called high fives. That means you can show some recognition if someone has done something well. So we like it. We use it for almost 2 years now, and it gives us a great overview of what's going on.
Great. Thank you, Jens.
You're welcome.
So I invite our attendees to contribute some thoughts and ideas as well. You'll see the chat session is now open. I'm going to dive into a dozen tips that come from myself and the community, and then we can look over your thoughts and ideas, and I'll add them, I'll mention them at the end. So here we go. Right, you should be seeing the screen. So over the next 15, 20 minutes, I'm going to talk about, mention a dozen or so ideas. Talk about presence first, the need for presence, accountability. I've got a couple of management tips, tools, an ideation tool, virtual norms and communications we'll have a quick chat about, and focus, relaxing in a group, and moving away from the desk, and peer time. We'll close on peer time. So without further ado, presence. Now, you know, so I've worked at home for 15 years, and I'm, you know, at the end of the day, you end up feeling kind of like isolated. I've worked with Arena for years, but I think this is something that most of your workforces are really feeling, is some level of isolation. I think the ideal office is one where you do have the ability to isolate so that you can focus, but this can end up backfiring and feeling not good. So we've looked at a bunch of tools over the years. The one that I really like, that I think is most suitable for you, is a tool called Sococo. Now, the way this works is you can see on here that there's a couple of people on the top left. So that could be your office, for example. So you can go there. If you can close the door, you can leave the door open. If, for example, you leave the door open, somebody else in your office who is also on this tool can double click on your room and instantly be transported into your room where you can hear them and they can hear you. So it's just like an open office. You could, of course, turn off the sound so that they can't hear you. You can mute your mic. You can close the door. You've got all sorts of controls, but basically you can wander around in this virtual office, and all of a sudden you've got presence. You can see the other people that are working at that point in time. And this visualization, it might look slightly cheesy, but it actually psychologically works beautifully in bringing presence. But that's all it does. It brings you presence, it brings you communication. You can chat, you can screen share, you can do presentations on the fly, but this in some ways also brings you that kind of serendipity that your teams are generally missing. The ability to wander around and kind of have a chat with people in the moment is really lost in the environments that most of us are in right now. Having this kind of impromptu chat is lost, unless you're doing kind of full-time Zooms, which is a little invasive. At least with this, you've got more control. The other element, which is super important, I think, is accountability. It's like, how do you know when people are working, know when, you know, and kind of get them to focus a bit more. So this tool is quite invasive, but it is extremely comprehensive. It's called staff.com, and it's a rebrand of Time Doctor 2. Now, this is a time tracking tool, but it also, you can have it take screen caps. And on the one hand, I think this works well with contractors that are on the fringe. It'll do a screen cap. They know it's doing a screen cap every, say, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever you want. So it holds them to focus, right? It's an invasive tool with a very limited use case, but it's a good tool to know about. Now, how do you combine those to have presence and accountability? There's actually a tool that I've been using, which I've found psychologically fantastic. I found it also doubles my output. In any given hour, if I use this tool, my output is 2 to 3 times greater. And it's called FocusMate. And this is very, you know, we're moving to video in the dating industry. And this is completely a video-born application. Here's the way it works. And I invite you to join. I mean, it's $5 a month. It's ridiculously inexpensive. The way it works is, top of the hour, what I'll normally do is I'll say, I'm available. I will then go into a session with a complete stranger. I'll see them, they'll see me. It's like we're on a Zoom, right? We're talking to each other. And I'll say, hi, I'm Mark, I'm in Malta. How you doing? Great. Pleasantries out the way real quick. Within 30 seconds, we have to then say what we're going to do in the next 50 minutes, right? We'll say, in the next 50 minutes, I'm going to reduce my high priority tasking by 5 items. Right, for example, or it could be very specific. I'm working on a presentation, actually, just before this. I'm working on a presentation. So 50 minutes later, they do the same thing, right? At the beginning, we both say, here's what we're going to do for the next 50 minutes. Then after 50 minutes, we get back, hi, did you get it done? And that's the culture. Within 30 seconds, then you say if you've got it done. And it sounds rudimentary and slightly daft, but I'll tell you, this thing really works. So I recommend trying it out. I think it's a different use case for video, and we're all moving towards video and exploring video, one-to-many, one-to-one. This is another mode of video, which I think is very powerful. I highly, highly recommend this. In terms of management, there's an absolute smorgasbord of, project management tools out there. What's always puzzled me is the absolute popularity of Slack. I see Slack as very much a conversation-first management tool. It's clearly vastly superior to email. Email is interruptive. And Slack also is somewhat interruptive. You get context with Slack, but the conversation is first. And I've always had a really hard time with that. And I use Teamwork. I've landed on Teamwork for the last several years now. What Teamwork does very, very well is allow you to lead with context. So it's context first, and then you have the conversation around that thing. That thing could be a milestone. It could be a project. It could be a particular task. So say if there's a particular task that you need to kind of drill down on, you can decide who's going to be in that conversation, have that conversation via email around that task. The conversation is then stored within Teamwork for reference, so you can always get back to it. And then the task is complete, that conversation is over, it's removed. You can have a notebook, you can have a file, a link. So anything you can have a conversation around, and it's context first. And I find that's very powerful. It's also got a full raft of, professional project management tools. You've got Gantt charts in there, for example. You've got capacity planning somewhat. There's also time tracking in there, very good time tracking tool. And reporting, lots of reports. So it's industrial strength. I love it a bit. So I couldn't function without it. But how about Agile Software? I don't think it works for Agile. Sprints aren't incorporated. So Darren Romeo, who's the CTO of World Singles, really likes Pivotal Tracker. I think this has been a standard tool for Agile Software dev for project management for some years. Some of you will be familiar with it already. Your dev teams probably are. Another one that was recommended by Sai from Matrimony is Good Day. I've not heard of this one, but does anybody use Good Day? Anyone familiar with that? It's Sai likes it, and they do sprints. That's incorporated. In terms of ideation, I think Sai also had a tip for ideation, which is Miro. And Eric, perhaps I can defer to you for a second. You've had some experience with this. I'm not familiar with this at all. Anybody else on the panel that's had some experience with this, if you'd like to mention.
Yeah, we have people that swear by it in the company. Miro, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but is a great tool to try and mimic what happens in a conference room with colleagues, where you have interactive brainstorming or problem solving, and has lots of tools to organize thoughts that everybody can at the same time participate in. And so you could be having a Zoom call and you could be showing the screen of Miro, and basically, like it shows here, you can have Post-it notes, you can organize brainstorming session, you can organize, and it allows you to have a very productive session, and then have clear follow-on steps and a document that everybody can go back to and relate to. So I've used it a couple of times, and it was a pretty simple application. One was a brainstorming session, but it was good. I think it's a very good tool if you're trying to replicate, again, that conference room problem-solving brainstorming type session.
Yeah, it just seems that the creative element is lost when we're all so far apart. How to actually engineer environments where we can get to know each other more, be comfortable enough to be creative. So are there any other tips and tools?
I could see Miro being interesting. Do you use that in connection with Zoom? So you're on Zoom and you're on Miro and you're switching back and forth between windows?
Yeah, I mean, like everybody, I mean, you can show and share your screen if you're the one that has the Zoom, you're one of the hosts, and then you can see the cursors of everybody else, because this is a live environment that everybody's connected to. And so you don't need to show everybody's screen. The screen that you're showing shows the activity of everybody that is in Miro. And so it actually is like if we're all on the same document, basically.
Got it.
So I think it's independent from Zoom. You can use it.
Right.
You can use it with any platform as long as you can share a screen.
Great. Darren also, this is actually from an article from 5 years ago, I might add. Darren did an interview. And so if you look on OPW under Darren Romeo, you'll see this interview, and he's got a lot of great tips. I've picked off what I thought were particularly poignant. And he makes a great point about communication, which I think, you know, a lot of times when I'm communicating with you, you'll see that I'll use smileys. And I'm always in two minds about using smileys because it looks a bit daft and juvenile, but it has its place. I mean, ultimately, the point that Darren makes here is, in fact, I'll read it to you. Technology will tend to exaggerate succinctness and directness, right? Well, you've got to help make this okay, especially for those on the team who may be a little extra sensitive in risking offending others. I'll never forget Eric Strauss, who was the CEO of Cupid.com when I was there in 2004, and he said, when I respond to you, there's no need to respond back and say thank you. So it's like, well, it's a little curt, but it makes sense. Otherwise, you end up getting inundated. Everybody's saying thank you. Okay, yes. None of that was necessary with Eric, and he just said, don't do it, don't bother, don't bug each other with it because it's not necessary. Further, Darren says, help make it safe for people to communicate explicitly. It can be boosted clarity, trust, and getting to the point. You may think emojis, emoticons, and the like are a bit silly. They are. However, they can go a long way in helping to express tone. Consider adding them to your messages, especially whenever there is a risk for misinterpretation or ambiguity. You know, I think that's a great point because it feels a bit daft using emojis, but there is a great place for them, especially right now. It's good to be clear on what the sentiment of that particular statement is. So just a happy face goes a long way. Focus on focus. Jimmy from Loyal Ears Digital had a great point about paradigm shift. Ultimately, I'll read this to you. When the digital world reared its head in 1998, so did I. I've always found the focus to be far better from a remote place with access to my partners and resources than any type of office atmosphere. So he's clearly thriving in this kind of atmosphere for some years. He's used to it. And I believe in a Zoom world, this can work for most service companies. So I see this is very much a paradigm shift. I mean, Jens, you're familiar with this. You can't imagine a world beyond this. I think we lose certain things, but we gain certain things. And is this the new norm? For some, it may be. I think we're all going to be a lot more comfortable with having our teams, you know, go and be creative on their own. Go and take some time in a different place.
Right. No, I think that's right.
Yeah.
I think in a Zoom, but I think that you could go too far down the Zoom kind of rabbit hole, right? So I think, you know, there was a time when we were thinking, well, gee, people who don't show their face, maybe we should encourage people to show their face. But I actually think the opposite is true. I think there's certainly meetings where it makes sense to show your face, but you know, I think I think there's a run against Zoom from the sense that like things that should have been phone calls and would have been phone calls and audio is perfectly fine for handling are suddenly video. And now because the other person is on video, now you feel an expectation to be on video and it's unnecessary. And because video is so physically restricting, meaning you probably only have a few places in your house you do video calls from, you know, then you're not out and walking about and doing what you can. One of our head of advertising has started a practice basically doing at least his one-on-ones with encouraging both parties to be on a walk and not and on audio only, not explicitly not on Zoom. We generally don't have a problem if you're not showing your face, although, you know, it's probably in certain meetings, if you're contributing, it probably makes more sense to show your face. But I like the concept of picking a subset of meetings and saying, you know, these are audio meetings. Another thing I'm going to be trying more to try to break out a little bit of the Zoom world is, at least for people that I'm interviewing, when we kind of progress to the point where it's close, then go on a walk and actually, interact with a person, especially for a key role that you might hire. So yeah, I think it is a Zoom world, but I'm not sure I'm entirely happy about it.
Well, the walking idea is good, but sometimes it's become so boring, looking at without having a face. So I would recommend people at least the first 5 minutes show a face. So at least you know whom you are talking to. You can able to relate it. After 5 minutes, it's okay to get into a non-video mode. But probably I can take the walking mode. That's seems to be a good one. Rather than sitting and looking at the screen. That is sometimes tiring.
I concur with Geoff. I in particular, because back-to-back Zoom calls, which a lot of us are doing now, are just exhausting. You have to stay in the place that you're in. Even in a conference room, you're moving more when you're meeting with other people. And so if you can, in some way, organize your Zoom calls so you have some of them that can be audio calls where you're walking around, even if you're not, you don't have the ability to walk around because you live in a very busy urban place that has a lot of noises in the background. Just having the freedom to walk around in your office space up and down, I think makes a difference and helps you sort of get a little bit of exercise, and it's important for your mind to get a bit of a break. So I haven't been as disciplined about it, but I do think it's a good thing. Yeah.
Jens, what's your thoughts?
I love the idea with working around. I just took some notes to try it. But yeah, we're very used to working with Zoom and all this for a very long time. I think you just get used to it over time, and you have to find a way to communicate in the right way. And I'm 100% subscribing to the idea to use a lot of emojis. We actually do use them a lot. Really a lot. And yes, it's sometimes it sounds really like, hey, we're kids or something like this, but it's a perfect way to express what you feel, and you cannot do with words. It's really short, it's to the point, and yeah, we use a lot those hug emoji and hearts and whatever. It's totally different than just writing some hi and this and that in a Slack channel.
I also think people are just so fundamentally different that some people really appreciate seeing the video, and then some people don't at all, right? Like, so I think, and we see this in our own surveys of employees where, when we ask people, are you considering coming back? There'll be a cohort that, I would say that the majority, the solid majority, prefer not to come back until there's maybe more safety, but there's a solid minority that seems like they're just going crazy inside their house and want things to kind of come back, and I think it just speaks to the fact that people are just so dramatically different that even if you say everyone's required to show their face on Zoom calls, that may well be good for 70 or 60% of people. But 20% of people, it's really going to be a problem for, and they're going to feel like you're really constraining them. So I would never do anything like the one you showed, Mark, about screenshotting. Maybe there's some role for that, but it's not any kind of skilled labor. I can imagine.
Yeah, it's definitely very invasive.
I would concur with that. I think not only I don't agree with sort of the practice, and don't even think that productivity or accountability would sort of be helped by it, but I also think most people would just not agree with it, and you'd have a revolution in your hands if you want.
Right.
Well, I love the idea of the walk and talks. I think there's plenty of headsets now that are noise cancelling enough that could be quite comfortable for people. I think in some ways, once you get moving, in fact, one of the best singles events to do is a hike. Because when you walk, you produce hormones which make you more open to starting a relationship, basically. Now I forget the name of the hormone, but hikes and wine tastings are a very good event. Right, chillax together. Jamie Lee from Lunch Actually Group recommends that you develop a decent regularity of some leisure catch-up over the web, playing games and connecting, e.g. with Zoom lunches besides work. Plus, send gifts of snacks and foods. That works for him. Bruno from Force's Pen Pals said, I have started to do some longer meetings where we just discuss everyday stuff and try and have a laugh. And Sai from Matrimony says, we also conduct Zoom calls for virtual card games, collaboration, virtual meetups to ensure we're all in touch. That's interesting. So what do you do? What would you recommend? What's working to kind of socialize and not be doing, you know, so much, being quite so focused on work? How do you reinforce these social connections, I wonder?
We just did a virtual escape room. So, you know, where people kind of got to play with some kind of technology that allowed you to kind of escape. And it was just basically a team exercise. So that, I mean, we also, I'm not sure if that's a good idea or not, but we also do, and people seem to enjoy it, weekly yoga. Actually, I think it's actually daily yoga sessions. That you can tell that I'm not actually one of the people who deal with it, but I know that the people who do really
that might increase the attendance of the employees if they can see you doing yoga.
Yeah, that would be audio only for me.
Pure entertainment. No, that's yeah. So my team, there's a couple of managers that have smaller teams, like 10 people, that actually organize game time where they all play together in game, and it has been very successful. We've done sort of like, you know, wine tasting, or just, you know, replicate the contacts or what we have in the office on Fridays, where everybody can have a beer in the afternoons. And that has been okay. I would say it's good. I don't think it replaces the personal interaction. I find lunch is a little bit difficult, because if you're having Zooms all day with people and then you want to do another Zoom doing lunch, you're like, okay, I'm done. That's different than going out with a colleague to sit down at the table and eating. That's more relaxing, I find. So, but yeah, I think some of these do an activity that's completely unrelated to work so that people can connect with each other is some of the things that I see working.
Jens, Muru, anything?
So that the daily connect with 5 employees, that's something really worked. Other than that, the daily call with all the leadership team, that's something helped. But again, of late, you know, I've been going to office for the last couple of months, and my interaction by and large with the senior leadership team, and some of them started coming to office. So, you know, we meet in person. So I'm not doing nothing special other than you know, the regular call and the meeting of people at the office. Yeah.
Thank you, Muru.
So we tried several coffee talk variations, and the last one we tried just today using Remo as a software. So everyone liked it, because basically you break the whole team down in smaller tables with up to 5 people. And then we started to do speed dating. So 5-minute rounds, there is a countdown running on top. And with this, it was quite fun, because after the 5 minutes, you just leave the table and you're in another table with another different group, and you talk about a different topic. And it was quite good. So everyone really enjoyed that. But besides that, yeah, I also would like to play some games, but we never could really unlock and find a game that everyone loves. So I'm really happy to receive some tips here.
Great. Thank you. Fascinating. Maybe we should do something on Remo. I like the idea of the wine tasting. All right. So you've got to move it, right? You've got to move your derriere off that chair and get more exercise. It's so easy to sit for hours and hours and hours, and the time goes by. I think that's one of the things that I like about FocusMate. It functions as a Pomodoro. It gets you to focus and then get up off the chair for 10 minutes every hour and take a break. So quite a nice tool is Rescue Time. I like this tool because it gives you, it tracks your time and tells you where you're using it. It's actually, Tim Ferriss invested in this company, and I think it's in one of his books. But it looks on your phone, it looks on your computer, and it tells you, even down to the website, you can tell it what website is, you know, for work and what is not. And then just for the individuals, not company-wide, this is just something for individuals to be able to use and get a sense of where they're truly spending their time. I think there's apps which will actually shut down social apps. I find that, I'm not sure that's really, I think it's good to know what's going on rather than just shut everything down. You know, there's actually a lady called Lorna Borenstein, who was the CEO of the head of Yahoo Personals years and years ago. And she went on to start this service called Grokka. And I actually discovered it last year. I was in Silicon Valley and found out she was running this and tried it out, and I love it. They've got yoga on here, they've got cooking classes, they've got wellness and meditation, and they also have some really good HIIT sessions that are nice and short, anything from 10 to 40 minutes. I find the 20-minute, 25-minute sessions are fantastic. They did a really nice job with this, and it's on Apple TV. There's actually a very slim choice of TV-based apps that are really well developed, and this is one of them. It's a good thing to consider for your companies. I'd recommend you have a look at it for your companies, but on an individual basis, it's very affordable. Best book, if you've not heard of this book, it's The Year Without Pants. It's a classic. It's about a guy who goes to discover how WordPress functions and helps them develop a social app and spend some time embedded with them. And that's a nice thought-provoking run around the concept of, I don't like the word remote work. I think distributed workforces, there's got to be another term for it, but remote just sounds a bit too remote. And just to close, I mean, ultimately peer time. I think that's one of the goals of doing LTR, is that we do have the time to have a chat with each other, have a chat with your peers. That's why I've made it a closed group. I mean, essentially it's like TED for the dating industry and the online social community industry. So it's a chance for us to sit down at a table for half an hour. And now the good news with this is it's going to start up in November as a monthly thing. The next one is going to be on November 19th. I'm going to run this every third Thursday at 11 a.m. EST. And then every fourth event, I'll put it on an Asian timeline. So it'll be 3 hours earlier. So we'll lose Pacific time, but we'll gain Asia and be a bit more comfortable for Australia a bit earlier in the day. So look forward to that. Of course, we've got the idea webinars going forward as well. And that's the presentation element. What I'd like to do now is have a look at your comments. If you've got anything else you'd like to share, any other commentary.
Yeah, Mark, yeah, a couple of things. One is we evaluate a tool called ProHands to monitor the employee productivity across India. We like the tool, so that tool gives all the information. So that's something we're looking at deploying it. That's one thing.
What's the name of the tool again? Sorry.
ProHands.
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 Okay.
And recently read a book called Indistractable.
Oh, yeah.
The idea is what you had spoke about, that creating a pact, the virtual pact, what you have created, just to ensure that you are staying committed to the work. That book talks about how do you stay committed to your towards your goals. Very interesting book, and that's very interesting about how to manage your external distraction and internal distractions, and some tools. Very interesting. So, so you may like it. Yeah, Near Oil. Yes. Yeah.
That's interesting. Goals, and I think the pandemic has made me more aware of kind of the importance of intentionality, right? So like I've made a point of trying to get rid of certain bad habits and do more of creative things, it's interesting that's part of, the pandemic, that you're basically, well, you're kind of stuck with yourself. And so what can you do? Right. One bad habit, it's not so bad, but I've been trying to give up coffee. It kind of just mostly did it. Occasionally jump on the bandwagon, but fall off the bandwagon, I guess. But
did you substitute?
Mostly did it.
Find something else you like.
I'm a tea drinker
Tea.
now.
Great.
Tea drinker. Green tea.
Oh, wow.
Which kind of green tea?
That
Wow,
is good
good
advice.
question.
I can't do it.
Okay.
I've been drinking more coffee, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Going in the wrong direction.
TWG tea. So I get all my tea from Singapore. It has to be the best.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Great. Good tea.
Good
It's
tea,
fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's really nice and, you know, the top-notch staff. Any other tips? Any other thoughts, gentlemen?
Looks like there's some questions, Mark, in the Q&A.
Oh, yeah. Let's have a look. I've got all panelists. Oh, we've got questions. There we go. Excellent.
Yeah.
So Carsten, great. What do you expect the policy of working, remote versus presence, will be at your company after COVID? What is the expectation you are actively communicating to your teams today? What's going to be the new norm then?
Yeah, so maybe I can sort of start there. We will likely be in a scenario where we'll have more flexibility, but will require some office work or some presence at the office for sure, because we're seeing definitely some things that are not working as well, in particular if you're getting new staff, and I mentioned all of these impromptu things that happen in the office. And so, you know, more likely than not, we'll have flexibility, but we'll have mandatory days in the office for sure.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm in.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry, Muru.
Please go ahead. Yeah, Geoff, go ahead.
I would say I'm kind of in the same boat as Eric. I do see the office remaining an important part of the employee experience. I think probably one of the more interesting ones I've read on this is Barry Diller's take, where he basically said, what do you think this will mean for the future of working from home, for ISC and ISC companies? And he said, there's not going to be any working from home. But as soon as this is fixed, everything's going to go exactly back the way it was. And so maybe with a work from home Friday, I think he might have said. So, I think that's probably, there'll probably be more flexibility. Because I think people understand that things have worked generally pretty well, but I think there is a need for an in-person component. You might need less, like you could imagine going so far, and we're not doing this necessarily, but I do think that one of the hardest times will be hybrid times, right? So like what I would never want to see is, half of my team is in the office and half is working from home. And now it's a real pain in the butt, because like it's one thing to have a Zoom when when everyone's on the Zoom. It's another thing to have a Zoom when half the conversation's in person on one screen and then everyone else is on other screens. The way that always ends is everyone at home doesn't matter. And they had better start coming to the office. And so if you're my sense is if we do a work from home capacity, at least everyone in the same group will be expected to come in on the same days and work from home on the same days, rather than facilitating hybrid situations. I'm sure you'll have some hybrid, but that would be not part of the plan.
Gotcha. Thank you, Geoff. Muru?
The way we are looking at, I think echoing what Eric and Geoff said, it'll be a combination of work from home and coming to office, but definitely looking at mandatory days where everyone expected to come to office on a particular day. And for new employees, definitely looking at least for the first few weeks or a month, they should be in the office, because then only they understand the culture of the organization. Once they understand the culture of the organization, it makes easy that, they want to work from home or come to office, that flexibility can be given. Yeah, that's what we are looking at.
Right. And Jens and I are both entirely distributed, so same old. So let me ask Sai. I've got a question from Sai from Matrimony. How do you onboard new people now? Anything different in the work from home mode now to get them inducted and make them accustomed to the style of working and culture? So how do you bring people on board? How do you hire and bring people on board right now? Eric?
Yeah, I think so. One of the things we're trying to do is, as I mentioned, sort of replicating some of these experiences, impromptu experience, by having people meet with several people across the company in a kind of random basis. We're fortunate in our Berlin office that we do have people coming to the office, so newbies can come to the office. It's not mandatory, it's optional, but I think it does make a difference. I do think being in the office is what sort of transmit or provides the strongest sense of culture and what the company is all about. And that's hard to replicate on Zoom. So I don't think we've figured out a way to onboard people so that, 6 months into their tenure, they're like, oh, I really like the culture here.
Right.
Because on Zoom, it's really hard to do that, which is why I agree with Geoff. I think there will be more flexibility, but it's hard to find a way on Zoom to replace that. So I don't think we've figured it out completely. It's still early. We do have, like, when we don't have an office open, like in most offices in the US now, we're sending all the materials and everything home. And so it's a bit awkward. And again, just impromptu meetings and that kind of stuff is what we're trying to do. And we have all the, if you're on board and you need to look at the materials and understand the company, understand your job and all of that is done through Zoom. It's just not the same. I don't think so.
Great. Thank you, Eric. Any other comments as regards?
Yeah, I would
onboarding?
underscore that's really hard. It's a tough question. I wouldn't say like we're doing it right. I think we basically do the onboarding experience that we used to, but on video, and I'm sure that that's not as effective. And one of the reasons why it may seem that everything has worked reasonably well since March is because everyone has so much kind of built up cultural reserve, right? Like, because everyone has worked in person with each other. They're kind of used to each other's quirks. And it's a totally different thing when you start saying, well, what about when, and of course, Jens has that's what you do. So that's, I'm sure you have some interesting things on that, but from a team that has relied on the in-person, I feel like we've been using that reserve in order to make this so smooth. But and we've been onboarding people, but into a group, as a group, I'm sure that those onboarded people aren't nearly as influential as they would have been if they had an in-office experience.
So it's very interesting because for us as a remote company, it's not that we never meet in person. So one really important event that we have is the yearly retreat. And especially for everyone that is new on the team, this is the important event. Basically, we spend at least 1 week together, and it's not about business. It's just hanging out together and have some fun with doing some exciting things. And we had to cancel the retreat this year. So it already feels like, okay, hopefully we can do it next year, early in the year, or find another replacement. And of course, if that will take on for like more than another year or something like this, that would be a real problem for the culture.
Yeah.
I apologize, Mark. I have to jump early, but I appreciate it all. Thank you.
All good. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
All right.
Good. I think we'll bring that to Muru. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, yeah, just a point. At a leadership level, it worked well. Remotely, you're able to induct and are able to kind of get the best. But at the junior level, it's become a challenge. We definitely expect employees to come to office so that they understand what is the organization and the culture. But middle level, we are not figured out yet, and so. Well, I talked to Sai separately to understand what are the concerns.
Great. Thank you so much for your time, gentlemen. I appreciate your time. It's precious, and your wisdom. Let's do this again in the future. And thank you to our participants. We'll run this video on OPW fairly shortly, and hopefully see you at LTR as well. So thank you so much.
Thanks.
See you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.